Hello and welcome to GeoSnippits. I'm Headhardhat. In the next few minutes, we'd like to teach you some interesting tidbits and information about the game, the sport, the obsession, known as geocaching. Now in today's episode, we're going to go over something kind of unique. Instead of telling you where not to hide a geocache like we had in one of our previous episodes, now we're going to tell you what not to use for a geocache. We're going to show you some prime examples of the worst kind of containers that you can use. Let's start now by going and explaining what will cause a geocache container to fail. Now there are three elements that you need to be concerned when it comes to geocaches, especially plastic ones. The first one is heat. Heat is caused by UV radiation from the sun, which takes the plastic and makes it brittle, allowing the plastic to become hard. Sometimes it will warp and it'll crack. So when you use plastic containers, use the heavy duty ones like lock and lock boxes, not the cheap Glad plastic transfer boxes. Now the second element, of course, is cold. A lot of the northern states and other areas around the world that have snow make it so that the containers can also become brittle and crack very easily. People can also go through and use their walking sticks and easily crack and poke into the top of the container. So when you're in a cold area, always consider that with plastic. The third and most important thing when it comes to geocache containers is making sure that it's waterproof. That way it keeps the moisture out of the container and into the environment that you're in. Always be careful of containers being waterproof. Well, wasn't that fun? Well, at least we learned the three main things that you need to consider when you put out a geocache hide. You need to consider the sun and heat and how it pertains especially to plastics, because a lot of our geocache containers are made of plastic. You need to think of the cold, opposite of the heat. It goes out and it can freeze and become brittle. And then finally, moisture, our number one culprit. That one we need to work on the most, and that's what we're going to concentrate on today. Okay, next on our list are these jewelry baggies. Now keep in mind, for many folks, and I highly recommend this, even though it's not the perfect solution, it is a help. When you have some of these micros and you have the logbook and you want to keep them that extra chance for being dry, use these jewelry baggies. They're nice, they don't last forever. Matter of fact, if you go through and have them open and close about 100 times, they're going to need to be changed. They're good for when you put them in another container to give you that little extra reassurance as far as keeping a logbook dry. What we don't want to use is this. If you go through and you use duct tape or any of the other kind of coverings, camouflage tape, that type of thing, and you wrap it around one of those jewelry bags and say, well, this will keep better than that, it doesn't. The reason why it doesn't is for the exact same reason the other bags fail. If you open and close them over and over again, eventually that seal's going to fail. And plus, this just doesn't hold up well to the elements. Yeah, it's cool for sneaking in certain little spots, but overall you're going to end up with a soggy logbook and some very unhappy finders. Don't use baggies when it comes to geocaches. Now, some of the things that we had talked about already in this video is environment. Your environment might be different than other people in other parts of the country and other parts of the world. For example, if you are in an area that is prone to heavy rains or snow, you're not going to want to use this guy. This is your standard Altoids can. It's very easy to use, seems like it's a great idea, seems to close up nice and tight. What happens is, in about a year, this becomes a rusty weapon that you don't want people to get cut on or hurt on. And it just, sometimes they just weld shut and you can't even open the things. keep in mind when you are in your particular environment, think about whether you can use these or not. Now, I have been told by people that are in a desert climate, these aren't so bad. But if there is any kind of chance for moisture or rain, don't use Altoid cans. Next on the list. I actually like these, but again, it deals with the environment that works for you. If you can find a spot to hide these key holders, go ahead and use them, but put them in areas where they're covered. In other words, the rain is not going to get to them directly. What we're going to do next is we're going to take this and do a little experiment. We're going to do what is known as a sink test or a dunk test. And we're going to see how waterproof these guys are. Let's go take a look. What you do for a sink test or dunk test is you get some water and you get some famous, this is our highly expensive tissue paper. We're going to take a piece of that, put it in this. Let's see if it gets wet or not. Now this is what my favorite part of doing the dunk test shows. You take a piece of tissue paper and you put it inside the container you want to test. You close it up absolutely tight so it's as solid as you feel that it's going to be. Now keep in mind, geocachers don't necessarily always close it as solid as you want anyways. But let's give it for the best that we can for this particular test. Now you're also going to say, Headhardhat, this can't be fair. You're going to dunk it in the water. It's going to get wet. If that is your answer, then don't use it if your environment becomes wet all the time. Because what you're going to have is a soggy pile of mush, and they're going to be calling that a logboard. Let's give it a try. I'm not going to put it in more for a couple of seconds. Let's see if it gets wet or not. 1, 2, 3, and out. Nothing major. Let's see how we did. Oh. Soggy wet book. Is this a good geocache? I think not. For the most part, stays dry. Now that's good on the first seal. The kicker is though, if you're in an area like a desert or an area that gets hot, like down here in North Carolina, you can get a 95-degree day. These buckle. People go through and they squish them sometimes just because they're messing around or doing whatever they have. What'll end up happening is that seal is going to get warped. And it may not be the first time. A baggie may keep a log safe for a couple of times. Eventually these suckers will warp and you're going to have to replace them, I would figure about once a year. Just keep that in mind. Let's give it a dunk. 3, 2, 1. You don't want to know. Well, we hope you enjoyed this episode of GeoSnippits and come back real soon. But before you go, let's go over what we learned today. 1, we learned that geocaches need to be waterproof. No matter where you're at, what environment you're in, waterproofing your geocache is absolutely number 1. Also, the environment you're in dictates what type of geocache you're going to use. Whether you live in a dry desert or a wet rainforest, whether you're in the upper northern cold or down in the south hot. You always want to make sure that your geocache fits the area you're going to be into. This is Headhardhat, hoping that you enjoyed this GeoSnippits and come back real soon, where we'll have even more interesting tidbits and information about the game, the sport, the obsession known as geocaching. Hope to see you on the trail real soon, folks. Bye-bye. Techie girl.
Yeah.
Slamming the thing down and then saying,
no.
"Where's no, dear?"
We are live.
Doing it in a we're live. In the middle of the shot, you slam it down and then start saying, "Where's the snow?"